Hey, everybody. This episode of Our Kids Play Hockey is brought to you by our title sponsor, NHL Sense Arena. Look, we all want our kids to succeed in hockey, but let's face it, finding training that's both effective and enjoyable can be a real challenge, and not to mention expensive and a total drain on time, especially if you have to drive to the rink, pay a private instructor. There's so many reasons that money gets spent on this game. But that's where NHL Sense Arena steps in. It's a virtual reality training game that brings the rink into your home that takes off-ice training to a new reality. It's designed to improve hockey sense and IQ, something that's lacking majorly in the game today for both players and goalies. And you get unlimited access to over 100 drills and training plans from top coaches and players that can be played anytime, anywhere, with drills approved by USA Hockey player and goalie development directors. Look, improving mental hockey skills at home has really never been more fun, and any hockey player that uses this is going to have a blast. All right. I've used this before on my own, and it feels like you're so immersed in an arena, you sometimes forget you have a headset on. And again, it's not being on the ice, but it allows you to work on some of these skill sets like scanning, as I said before, hockey IQ, looking around the rink, making the right plays, that getting those repetitions in now as a hockey player are super important for your development. So NHL Sense Arena is giving all the listeners an exclusive offer for $50 off an annual plan when you use our code Hockey Never Stops at checkout. Again, that's Hockey Never Stops. All you got to do is go to hockey.sensearena.com. Again, that's hockey.sensearena.com. Use the code Hockey Never Stops, and you'll save $50 on your annual plan of NHL Sense Arena. Make sure to check that out and enjoy this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Hockey people, welcome back to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. If you're here, you know we got another great guest for you today. Today's guest, Pete Whitney, used to be the coach of Post University, a Division II NCAA team, recently retired, and we got to pick his brain and really have a fantastic episode today about the journey from youth hockey to prep school / collegiate hockey and beyond. For those parents out there and players that really are interested in that topic, this is going to be the one for you. Pete really dives into what he would look for as a coach, what other people are looking for, and how, at the home, you can start building the skill sets, the mindsets needed to really play hockey at the next level. So really enjoy this one. I know we did as the hosts, lots of golden nuggets of wisdom in this one. Also, getting towards the holidays here now, I would like to provide you with some value. So check out hockeywraparound.com and use the code OKPH. Again, hockeywraparound.com, and try their patented hockey wraparound, their flagship product. Over hundreds of thousands of these have been sold. Tremendous amount of positive 4.5 or up reviews on Amazon. If your kid is using a very expensive hockey stick and you're dreaded about them using it outside, this will protect the blade of their stick. It is well known. Again, check it out, hockeywraparound.com. They also have their dry stick equipment, portable equipment dryer. Check that out. Attaches right to your hockey stick, which we all have. Consolidates the area you can dry your equipment in. It's also fantastic for road games or tournaments. That's going to be a big one for this holiday season. Again, check it all out at hockeywraparound.com. And finally, look, if you're loving this podcast, which I know you do because you're here, feel free to share it with some friends. Put it in your team snaps. Put it on your chats. Give us that 5-star review wherever you listen. We really, really appreciate you as an audience, and continue to grow here at the Our Kids Play Hockey Camp. So check that out and let us know how we can support you. Email us at team@ourkidsplayhockey.com. But without further ado and all that messaging, enjoy this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey with Pete Whitney. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias, and I'm joined by the two hockey podcasting Hall of Famers, Christy Casciano Burns and Mike Benelli. We've got a great episode and a great guest today. This is going to be one for all the parents and players that are thinking about college hockey for the future. So that's most of you. We are proud to introduce our guest, Pete Whitney. Pete comes to us well qualified. He just retired as the head coach from Post University. That's an NCAA D2 team. He served as their first head coach since their creation in 2015. So he developed this program from the ground up. Prior to Post, Pete spent 11 years as an assistant or an associate head coach at the Gunnery School in Washington, Connecticut. It's a very, very good school. He has also been a scout for the United States Hockey League and was a head coach for Central Connecticut State of the ACHA. And he is active in USA Hockey, part of the coaching education program, and serves as an instructor for the New York district, along with our good friend, Mike Benelli, who's sitting here today. Pete has helped place many student athletes into the NCAA and coached 2 NHL draft picks and a Hobie Baker Award finalist. That is unbelievable company to be holding as a coach. This man knows how to spot talent and how to develop talent for the next level. It's going to be a good conversation. Pete, welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Thank you. Can we sign off now? Because that was really good. That sounds great.
After, however, we're probably at around 100 episodes, I'm getting okay at this, right? The tough part's finding new puns to introduce my co-hosts every week. I got to stay on that game before it gets bad. So, Pete, typically we'd start an episode with your background and what you did, but I actually want to dive into something today because I know the parents that are listening to this are kind of sitting on the edge of their seats in their car driving wherever they're going. So I'm gonna start with the question of the hour, if you will. What do you look for and scout for when you look as a college coach for recruiting players?
For me, I mean, the obvious thing is can the player contribute in some fashion, right? Or do they have a way that they're effective in a game, right? I think one of the downfalls that a lot of players have, maybe when they see somebody in the stands, they try to do too much and they actually try to get away from their game, which actually can take away from a coach's ability to want that player. So if you're somebody that finds a way to be effective, now that doesn't necessarily mean scoring a goal. It might be maybe you're back checking. Maybe you're good in the D zone, picking somebody up. Maybe it's that first pass that you make. Even sometimes with me in situations where, depending on the team that you're on, right, it varies with talent in that you're watching, because there's some teams where everybody's really good. There's some teams where there's a couple of players that kind of stand out. So finding ways to be in the right spot at the right time, regardless of if that teammate is maybe even getting you the puck, showing a hockey IQ. For me, hockey IQ is big because we can work on developing your shot. We can work on developing your edges. We can, to some extent, work on the IQ with video and that. But for me, someone who looks like they can be effective in some fashion, and to me, that relates to their IQ. So that for me, that's the biggest thing that I always look for.
How many times do you have to look at a player before you know that player is going to be a good fit for your team, for the school?
Honestly, that really depends on how dynamic that player actually is, right? Because there are some players that stand out immediately. You can see that they skate above and beyond the other players. Someone who is really hardworking. So for me, 2 to 4 times I'm going to watch that player to make sure they're consistent at that, because that's the other piece, right? When you get to the college level, we're going to play, like we went to the finals that my last year, and I think we played 28 games total, right, compared to the 50, 60 plus that juniors play.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to find a way that guys are consistent, and that's hard. It's hard, just like in the NHL. It's hard to be up for an 80, 81 game schedule. So the consistency is a big thing for me.
I also want to say, but you brought up a good point that it made me think of a story of Dennis Rodman. Basically, he started playing basketball very late in life, was not a good shooter, but he said, and if you ever watch The Last Dance, he says this: I knew I could be good at rebounding, and he became essentially the best, or one of the best rebounders of all time, to the point he got noticed by the best in Michael Jordan. So for parents out there and players out there, I think it's really important that you know what your child excels at. And it's important to build upon, and Pete, feel free to comment on this, build upon all skill sets. But, I always say, if you're in a scoring league, become the best passer. If there's people in the league that are having a hard time passing, get great at being a playmaker. Or as you said, the hockey IQ, find other ways to separate yourself from the crowd. Because I know when I was coaching college or even in the pro ranks, you're right. We look for a diverse group of things, right? We need something that's going to fit into our team, fit into the equation. And don't get me wrong, if there's a guy or a girl that has all 5 of the traits you need, everybody wants that player. But it's finding that right person that's going to fit. And then on top of it, Pete, throwing it back to you, there's the culture aspect of it, the personality aspect of it, right? That the talent is just not enough.
Sure. I mean, for me, finding that player too, like what you were just talking about, Lee, with, right, that player does all 5 things. Obvious, stands out really, really
Right.
well, really easily. But part of the fun for me recruiting was kind of maybe finding that player that maybe is a little under the radar, that maybe isn't super flashy, but I know that player can be better.
Right.
And for me, that's the fun of coaching, was growing and developing them. And then the second part is that conversation, when the event's over and you're waiting around a half hour with all the other coaches in line to talk to different players, see what the conversation is, can that player hold a conversation? And at the college level, honestly, my first question with that player is, how are your grades? How are you doing in
Right.
school?
Right. Yeah.
And
That's important. That is critical. And I think a lot of kids forget that, and they may not realize how difficult it is to play college hockey and maintain good grades and go after your dreams career-wise, not just athletically. It's like having a second full-time job. I think kids really need to face that reality. And they, once you get into it, be careful what you wish for. It's a lot of work.
yeah, I mean, the other part of it too is there's a certain about a knowledge that I think some parents, no fault of their own, they just don't have. So at the Division I and Division II levels, there's something called the NCAA clearinghouse. Well, in order to play at those levels, you have to have a particular GPA in your core courses. So very often you'll have a conversation with a player and you'll say, well, what's your GPA? Well, my GPA, let's say it's a 2.5 or a 2.6. I think it's a 2.1 or it might be 2.2 now to get through, but it's only on your core courses. So the course that you had in, basket weaving and introduction to maybe whatever doesn't factor into that. It's your math, your English, your science, and your social studies, right? So that's an important part to understand too, because guys will get, unfortunately, sometimes there'll be a little bit of surprise for players, right? That hey, you know what? You don't really have a 2.5 because these courses don't count, don't matter. And that's only to Division I and II level. 3 is not like that. 3, if you got the minimum GPA, you're good to go.
I always found when coaching and playing in college, one of my big realizations in college when I played was that I could apply my work ethic to hockey to other things. And it took me almost, I feel like, too long to figure that out. But I remember in high school, I was focused only on hockey and just I wanted to get to the next level and I would do anything I could. And I would say I didn't get horrible grades, but they suffered for that. My focus was on hockey. And then I remember when I got to college, they tell you right away, well, if you don't hit this minimum GPA, and then my coach wisely lifted it, it was higher than the minimum, you can't play. So suddenly I was like, well, I have to do good in school to play hockey. And Christy, to what you said, it became a second job. I don't know which one I considered the second job. I don't remember if I thought school was the second job or hockey was the second job, but I got real serious real quick with school. And I remember it clicked of, look, I can put this work ethic I'm putting into hockey in anything. So for parents listening, I always like to share that message because I want your kids to know that before I did, right? If they can learn that in high school or middle school, that, your schoolwork and really anything you want to do in life, you can apply your passion or your work ethic to it because it all becomes part of it, right? And Mike, Pete, Christy, we talk about this all the time. The best athletes, they're doing it all the time with everything they do, right? Connor McDavid does not just get competitive on game night. He's probably competitive all the time. And you can pick any great athlete. That's how they operate. So, Pete, throwing it back to you, you've got to coach a lot of athletes in your coaching career, right? Any ones that stand out in the qualities that they had, or maybe ones that didn't have those qualities that developed them? I'm trying to find messages for parents that are listening of, my kid's somewhere in the middle, and I want to find these traits or these coaches too that can help develop them.
Sure. I think for me, I use the phrase that winning is a byproduct of everything else that you do. And that does not just apply in hockey, because I think hockey, because of the adversity in our sport, right? I mean, you take people, put them on steel blades, give them sticks, start whacking each other, tell them to behave. There's a lot of adversity going on in our sport, right? So getting through all that and learning all those pieces of adversity and how to overcome them, it becomes part of the fabric of who you are. And I see that with a lot of my guys after they've graduated now, because I had from prep school to college, all the classes I've gone through, the guys that are the most successful are the ones that understood that, that did whatever they could to be better at everything. And now that's not just, doesn't mean just on the ice, because once you get into college and to some degree in prep school too, there's things like student activity committees, fundraising committees, student government, things like that. People that get involved and then learn to excel in whatever it is they're doing, that carries through to real life. And in my past, to answer your question, those have been the best players.
Mm.
Those have always been the best players, without a doubt. The people that were singularly focused were good, but not having the same opportunities that those other people did.
Fantastic point. And you know, that comes from somewhere. So this is the next dreaded question for the audience. Parents obviously play a role in moving their children from youth hockey to the next level, right? What do you look for in parents when you're considering a player?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I look for a parent that allows their child to be, or their son or their daughter, to be proactive in what they're looking for.
And independent, right?
Right. I don't want to get an email from a parent. My most dreaded conversation is, hey coach, I don't know if you watch my in my case it's a boy, right? I don't know if you watch my son play, but he was number so and so. You know, the team's not great, but he's doing okay. Like, stop. Please stop. Let your child advocate for themselves, because that's the biggest thing. That's part of the lesson. Right. That's part of the lesson, is learn to self-advocate, because you're going to need to do that in the real world. And it's a great arena for you to learn that. Ice hockey is, I think, being on a team, any team really, but being on a team, let them go. The hardest thing is let your kid go, because you love your child. You don't want to see your child fail. But sometimes the best thing you can do is allow your child to fail and be there for him and help him get up.
Right. Yeah. And I've had this conversation with Paul Flanagan. He just retired as the SU women's hockey coach. Early on, when Sophia expressed interest in college hockey, he said, "Ooh, you should not be talking about this with me, Christy. Sophia should." And Sophia was just 12 or 13 years old at that time. And he said, "Do you understand what I'm saying to you?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I got to step back and let her do all the work." He said, "Exactly." He said, "There's nothing more annoying than getting emails and letters and phone calls from the parents advocating for the kids." He goes, "That ends it right there. The conversation doesn't progress. I want to hear from the kids." Yeah.
For sure. I mean, I've got you mentioned throwing stories out there. I've got a story that was shared with me by a friend of mine who's a former Division I coach, who one day the telephone rang, and it was I'll make up the names. It was John's dad on the phone. And he said, "Hey coach, good morning. This is Bob. I'm John's dad." So, okay. So I just kind of wanted to talk to you about John a little bit, and everything okay with him? Yeah, he's fine. I just want to talk about his playing time and what's happening there. So there was a coach pause for a minute, and he said, "Bob, this conversation can go one of two ways. You can tell me what you need to tell me, and then I'm going to have a very difficult conversation with your son. Or you can say, Coach, just called to say hello, and I hope you have a nice day." There was a pause on the end of the phone, and Bob said, "Coach, hope you have a nice day."
Smart.
Yeah, I think that goes along. I think that goes along like with your life cycle of coaching, though, Pete. Right? Is that from amateur hockey to prep school to college, I don't know if parents are equipped with those answers all the time, right? I mean, so what are some, like, so we're coaching our kids, right? We hopefully, if I have a bantam or a peewee and he's looking at prep school, I'm coaching that player. I mean, you don't expect a 13-year-old to ask about, a tuition assistance and, what the core credits are going to be for them in high school. I wouldn't expect that, but there are certain things we can do, right, for our kids to give them the guidance and our own coaching as parents to help kids navigate the prep school route, from prep school to junior, from junior to college. I mean, so what are your recommendations for like the top 3 things you would want a parent to coach their kid and their player to ask? Like, what are the things that you want to hear from a player? Because I know, like, when I advise our players, I'm like, well, listen, you have to ask, what's the pipeline look like? Is it wrong for me to ask what the pipeline looks like for your players? If I'm a goalie, do you have 7 goalies coming in? Like, do you recruit new kids every year? Is there a cap on your recruiting? Do you look for players? Certainly you're telling me I have a certain role, but, can I ask you, how do I earn that role? and change that role throughout the year? Are those kind of questions off limits to you from a recruiting standpoint for a kid to ask?
Sure. So you're talking that junior level kid or prep school that's going to try to make that right. You're not talking.
And I want to know, I'm doing my research, right? I'm doing my research on you. Hey, Coach Whitney, I see that you're in your 4th year at Post University. Are you going to be here in 2 years? Like are these off limit questions for players nowadays to ask? Because, and maybe the audience doesn't know this as in depth, but the players in college can transfer on a dime right now, right? They could just leave, just like now, like basically where coaches were allowed to do for years and years. So now if a player has that power to say, well, I'm not really happy with this year, so I'm leaving. After all the work, I mean, Chrissy just asked you, how much do you invest in a player before you commit to them? It's a lot, right? It's not one video. It's a lot. So if you're investing that much time in the player, doesn't the player have a right to invest in finding out, where you're going to be?
Yeah, I think 100%. I mean, I've always been very open with that. And I want a player when we go through a recruiting process, and I tell them this: ask anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
There's no bad questions. I usually use the example. I said, you probably played for someone who you weren't maybe getting the shifts you want, maybe you weren't getting the ice time, and you sat in that coach's office and he looked at you and he said, you just need to work harder. I said, if I ever tell you that, first off, I never will. You'll never hear that. You'll never hear that from me. But if I do ever tell you that, you can call me out right then and there, because I will tell you, we'll sit there and I'll say, maybe your back check isn't good. Let's look at some video. Your first 2 steps need to be better. You need to make a better pass, whatever it may be, but you will have something tangible when you leave my office that you know you can work on, because there is nothing more frustrating. Just picture it in your daily life, right? If you're working for somebody and maybe you didn't get a promotion or you didn't get a spot you wanted, and your boss said, just hang in there, man. Just hang in there. You'll be okay.
Right. Yeah, and then your seat's taken the next day. You come in on Monday, like, what do you mean I have a job? You told me everything was fine. Well, no, you just weren't working hard enough. But what was that? And I love that. Like, what does that mean? Okay, I'm not working hard enough. Oh, I'm looking at your progress report. I talked to your advisor and you're late for class every day. That's not a player. Like, if I'm a coach, I'm like, I can't trust you. Like, I can't trust that you're going to be here for me. So I'm out recruiting right now for players that I know will be in class every day on time. And then I don't have to, put that same effort in. So, so I guess, like, where is that fall on the pecking order of you're in a room? Because most high school kids are going to be like, I don't know. Yeah, it was okay. Like, that kid's going to be in a room alone with you. Right. Hopefully with a parent, but like, I know when I was heavily recruiting, it was always, okay, the player goes off, with me, and the dad goes and the mom go and see the tour of the campus. And I get to kind of be in the room with maybe my captain or one of the leadership and saying, hey, we're going to ask questions, because, and the best people to ask is my leadership. Ask the people that are on my team right now. I mean, I remember one of my recruiting visits, I won't name the school, but I'm like in the bathroom and 2 hockey players walking in, like, you do not want to come here. This is the worst place you could ever be. These are 2 players that are on the current team. Right? This is the worst campus. It's the worst coaching staff. I come to find out these are both like 4th line guys, right? And they see me as a threat because they're like, okay, well, this guy's coming in. Like, I don't want this guy coming in against another person I got to compete against. So is it wrong for a player to sit in the room and ask you, okay, I looked at your roster. You only have 1 senior. Where do I fit in? And then of course I think I fit in, but what can you tell me, some tangible advice you can give me that I can walk up the ladder on your team? I mean, that's okay to ask, right?
Yes. I mean, 100%. At the end of the day, I want, and you mentioned, players, because some players will come with their parents and some won't come with their parents. It all depends. If they come with their parents, quite honestly, I include the parents in the conversation, because I don't have anything to hide. I mean, parents, you ask a question, player, you ask a question, because at the end of the day, I want people that want to be there. When you finally make your decision and you come to play for me, I use the phrase, I want you to take down the rearview mirror and just look forward, because that's where we're going. I don't want you to have, well, what if I had done this, or what if I had done that? If that's where your head's at, I'm probably not the place for you to be. And that's okay. If I'm not the place for you to be, the reality is we will find someone else. And if you're on an opposing team, we see it in the game, shake your hand, wish you well. But having that knowledge and knowing all of the answer to those questions, Mike, like, yeah, for me, open book, always was willing to answer questions. They're never necessarily always easy questions. Sometimes you agree to disagree on certain things, more so after a player's been with you for a while. But in the recruiting process, ask absolutely everything, because that's how you're going to find out who that person you're going to be playing for the next 4 years really is. If they're evasive, if they beat around the bush with answers, if they don't give you an answer, if they give you a political answer, then you got to decide if that's something you really want to play for.
Right.
Can I just add one little thing in there, just on this subject? Would you rather hear from my son's hockey advisor at 15 or my son?
I'd rather hear from your son, because I know the advisor is probably you. And
Right. Well, I paid a lot of money for that advisor to call you. So
that's right. And we're paying the tuition bills.
So yeah. But so I guess that ultimately. Yeah.
I have a prep school question. It is different for women and men. Do you ever look at kids who are not in prep school to recruit for college now? Because it just seems like the trend continues. More and more kids are not playing high school hockey. They're leaving high school if they're serious about playing college, to play a prep school and then play juniors in order to get looked at. And then, I've seen it at my daughter's college. The freshmen are 22 and 23 years old now. Just start now.
So it's a little different, I think, in the women's game than the men's game.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely different for women.
There are so many junior opportunities for the men to play that it's a natural thing that you do. Whereas with the women, prep school to college is way more common. But to your point, it is becoming less common. But I think some of that too might be geographically where those players are coming from too, where it's perhaps more accepted that, well, go play post grad, go play a junior year. Because the reality is, and it's true. Women are more mature than men. They just are. They mature at an earlier rate, quicker rate, and they seem more focused on, I want to get to school and I want to get my life going. Whereas guys are like, okay, let's do it. 2 more years. How long can I play? It's just a little different attitude. I think a little different mindset. Not that it's right or wrong either way, but I just find that as a difference. I just say that because I coached high school girls for about 6 years. I did that. And I just found them more like they knew pretty much what they wanted to do for a career when they were seniors in high school.
Yes.
Whereas
I found that too.
Guys are.
But I guess the question is, so I'm a parent of a boy who wants to play college hockey. Do I have to accept the fact that he's got to go to prep school at age 14 and 15? He's got to leave his high school, forget about playing high school hockey. If he's got a lot of talent and it looks promising that college is going to look at him, do I have to accept the fact that he's got to go to prep school?
I don't think he has to go to a prep school, because there are a lot of opportunities for those for the guys, and like to your point, not so much with the women to play like U18 and kind of work your way up. So you could be going to your high school, still going to the dances and doing all that stuff, because that's important. Those are things that they give up that they don't think about at the time, but down the road they can matter, right? So you do have the opportunity to still go to your high school. Problem there is you're not playing for your high school. You got to deal with the social aspect of that, of why you aren't playing for your high school.
Exactly.
Right. But at the end of the day, getting yourself to where you feel you can be most successful and you are most comfortable. If you leave and go somewhere and you're not happy having made that choice, you're probably not going to be successful, right? Like, you're not going to be really good at a job you take that you don't really like the job.
Yeah, I think this comes back a lot to what the kid wants versus what the parent wants, and then that really challenging balance of parenting your son or daughter through that time, right? Because there's really no right or wrong way to do it. I will say this, Pete, that one of the things I think we're seeing right now, nationally, is that there's a little bit of an accountability issue amongst parents and kids, younger ages, in the sense of, and I've said this before on the show, look, it's really hard, very hard to watch your kid fail. Right. But what I find is that it's, as a parent, it can actually be easier to fix the problem because it saves you as the parent the pain of having to watch your kid fail. And I think personally, and again, there's a delicate balance here for everybody listening. Everybody has to kind of do it their own way. I'm not saying there's a right way, but you do have to let your kid fail, right? You have to let your kid learn how to fail and deal with that adversity and rise up and fail again and rise up and fail again. And I think that that's not happening enough. Right. So what happens is, Christy, to your point, 14 or 15 years old, the prep school question comes up and they're really not where they need to be because they've not faced that type of adversity. And then they go because either the parents are telling them to go or it looks like a great option. And you're just hit in the face with all this massive adversity. Pete, you alluded to that, things that happen in high school and they can't deal with it. And look, not to take it too serious, but we're seeing massive rises in teen suicide, athlete suicide, uncommon numbers. Like, we're kind of ignoring that right now as a nation. Again, we got a lot of problems going on, but it comes back to this, and this is where I'm going, Pete, and this is why I love you as a coach. There's not a lot of ego with you, if any. You said that about your interview. Ask me questions, right? I always tell young athletes, you should ask a lot of questions about the culture and how you think you fit in and where you want to be in a few years. You want to have that relationship with your coach. Don't make it political. Don't talk about how great you are, right? Find someone you can work with, and you need a coach without a lot of ego with that. I've had coaches that have told me how it's going to be before I've even asked a question. I don't want to play for that guy, right? Or if I suggest something, I've had coaches where I've suggested systems, right? Pete, I just said, hey, I played this in the past. What do you think about this? And the coach said to me, don't you ever tell me what to play. And that's not what I was doing. I was just trying to talk hockey with the person, but lack of ego, right? The other thing, Pete, about coaching, you said, I want to touch on it. And you said this earlier, we kind of went past it. I love that you said that when someone comes to your office, you want to give them something tangible to leave with, to work on. I think that's so important. I think that's the whole point of coaching. Again, going back to what I said about parents, it can be real easy just to say, no, I'm right, get out. You know what I mean? Or to say them that. So giving them tangible things to work on, something we should be doing in society too, right? I would say coaching and leadership should be transferred, are important. So sorry, I'm monologuing a lot. Here's the question I had. All right. With everything I just said, you've coached a lot of different levels, a lot of different roles. How have you evolved as a coach over time, and how has coaching evolved over time, keeping in mind some of the things I just said?
Sure. I think for me, yeah, I mean, I can remember times where, honestly, way back, my way or the highway, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can go back even further. So I'll go back. Here's a good story. Hopefully it doesn't embarrass my son. I don't think it will. He's 8 years old. I'm coaching a squirt team, right? And we argue way too much in the car on the way home about his play, about how the game went, that kind of thing. So we made a rule that when I'm on the bench or at practice, I'm coach.
Mm-hmm.
I get in the car, I'm dead. And I'm not going to ask you anything about your game again. If you want to tell me, that's great. I'll have a conversation with you, but I promise I won't ask. So this goes on for about 2-3 weeks. And I, of course, I'm going out of my mind on the ride home because he's not talking about the game at all. And I'm dying to find out how things are going. And he knows it. Like, he knows he's 8 years old, but he knows he has me. Right? He does. So we're driving home. At one point, it's so quiet. It's stone quiet in the car. So I finally say to him, so what did the coach say to you after the game? And he just started laughing. I started laughing. And ever since then, it's been great. Ever since then, it's been great. But that's a place where I grew, where then I knew, and I think I realized it's about them. Like, even go up to the college level, even at the pro level, right? It's about them, because all those people that you're directing, that you're trying to gain their trust, that you're trying to teach, they're the ones that help you keep your job. So you probably should be really good to those people.
It's a great quote. That's a fantastic quote. Mike, I want to hear your thoughts on that quote. Coach Mike.
Yeah. No, listen, my son is he's like, you never do this stuff with me. I go, yeah, but I'm coaching you. Like if I'm your coach, and you're really kind of screwed, because I talk to all the players that way. Like I probably talk to my players too much, like about their own play, and they're not my kids. Like I'll be like, okay, I'll be on our app chat or whatever. I'm like, hey, listen, you got to do this better, or that was great, or I really love this. Like I like talking hockey. Like I want to get the kids to talk to me. So it becomes like, then separating, like with your son, Pete, it's like, okay, well, don't you just want to talk about hockey? Like I just want to talk about hockey as a coach. Like imagine if I could have my whole team in the back of the car right now. I would love it. It'd be a great opportunity for me to have a conversation. But no, it's hard. It's but I think having that, the evolution, I don't know, when you hear for the most part, modern professional coach in any, from the Pete Carrolls to the Gerard Gallants, he's probably a little bit more old school, but Paul Maurice's of the world. Like when you start talking to these coaches and you start hearing from them, they all talk about this dichotomy of the move of, well, you got to listen to the players. Like the players have to be an active participant in the team. It can't be a dictatorship anymore. And I don't know if we're allowing that to happen more and more. Like we're allowing it to happen as parents, and we're allowing it to happen as coaches, and players are maybe, I guess they're more knowledgeable maybe than they were in the past. Right. But isn't there a point, Pete, when as a head coach, you still have to maintain that authority and that discipline and the ability to say, it's not my way or the highway, but you're coming into a situation where it is my way. Like the 5 dads on my team don't get an opportunity to tell me what the lineup should be, because they could ask me what my thought process is of why I put the lineup together, but I'm the one. Somebody has to make a final decision. No,
right, and I think that's where the separation. You hope that you create a trust with your team, where the players, and I've had this. I've had the situation where a parent called me, and I'm not going to say it didn't go well, but I really didn't give them the time of day. And it ended with, please don't tell my son. Right. Yeah. So the next day, and I didn't say anything to the son, but so the father must have talked to the son, because the next day the son came up to me and he said, I understand that my dad called you. I want to apologize for that. I'm 24 years old. I can advocate for myself, coach. I want you to know. And that was great to me, even though that at that point I felt that player was an average player. That player was an above average human being.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to take that player further in his life? The lesson that they learned, right? Or their ability. Because one of the things that really kind of irks me in today is when I hear parents say, I've invested so much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you have your child take piano lessons for 10 years. If they're not a world famous concert pianist, have they failed? No. But in athletics, if that son or daughter hasn't reached the highest level, somehow you affix blame and or failure to that, which is probably the last thing you should really do.
It's terrifying, to be honest. That's the word I use.
Yeah,
that is terrifying to me, that you would equate a numerical worth to their time as a hockey player, when that is the farthest thing that should be from your mind. Is obviously
but isn't that our industry? Isn't that what we're doing? We are the lead. You're the leaders of the hockey world, soccer, lacrosse. We're doing that. We as organizations are saying, if you practice with me year round, if you go to my 10 showcases, if you do this and you do this, come in my rink, look at all the banners of all the kids that are successful, and not one of those banners say that I graduated 17 kids last year with a 4.0 GPA. So it's our fault. And why do we expect parents not to fall into that funnel and that gap, and then expect, oh, well, my kid's 21 years old. He's a man. He should be able to speak for himself. When all along the way, we've never built that into their, who they are. And that's so I do agree that success is not making an NCAA Division I hockey team. There's success in that, but your success as a human being and your parent and how your parent feels about walking around like that
Right.
shouldn't be the ultimate goal. But at the same time, I can understand why parents fall into this trap, because we're leading them down this path that success can only happen if you follow me in all the different things I'm telling you to do.
Yeah, Mike,
Right.
I'll say this. I think it's a bit chicken and the egg. All right. And like, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. But at the same time, there just needs to be a massive culture shift that has nothing to do with money here, of what we value as a society. And, again, if making the NHL is the top priority, I mean, that's just not a strong value to me. I get it. Like, I get it. That was my dream for a long time. Right. And I didn't do it, but I don't equate my success as a human being on whether or not I did that. And I think that two things, and then Christy, I would love your thoughts on this too. You were talking about your son being 8, Pete. My son's 8, right? And I had to come to the realization, Mike, you said this, I love talking hockey. I want to talk hockey. He is not thinking about hockey the second he gets off the ice. He's thinking about video games and other things. So I had to, empathize with that, of being 8, which all of us have forgotten what it's like to be 8 for the most part, and kind of appreciate that he can be that present and be done with the game and not care.
Yeah, thank
Right.
God.
Yeah. So I think a lot of this also comes down to our ability as people to just listen and note and watch. Right. And that just because I love to talk about hockey, and this is what it is, Mike, with parents, in my opinion, and coaches too, what I want or what I think is not what everybody might be wanting or thinking. And that's empathy, right? Just putting yourself in someone else's skates or shoes for a minute and saying, my 8-year-old doesn't care about this to the same point that I do, and knowing that.
And it's
Right?
funny, right? Because to some degree, you're talking about choice and people's ability to be different. But when you get into the rink, they struggle with that. Look in the parking lot. It's not just black and white Chevrolets. It's every color car you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's every brand of car you can imagine, because people have choice and they're willing to figure out what works for them. But once you walk into the rink, it's like, Lee's the best player out there. He's the most successful kid. I'm going to watch what Lee does, and that's what my child's going to do. Right? Instead of, like you're talking about, just love the fact that your child's an individual.
Right.
Teach them to play to their strengths, whatever that may be in life in general, in the game for sure. And then just enjoy it, because like, it happens quick, right? Like, my kids are grown now. I got grandkids. And the best thing you can do is actually have a really good relationship with your children,
Right.
which I'm fortunate to do. And like, at the end of the day, everything else will take care of itself. Again, winning, success, all byproducts of everything else you do.
So, yeah.
But if I just follow you, where's my identity? Where do I come in? Right.
Right. And also support them if they decide in the middle of their college career that they want to leave the hockey program.
Oh.
I've seen that with kids. It's hard, but it wasn't right for a couple of college students. They decided sophomore year, I'm done. It's not what I thought it would be. I want to go to Europe in the fall. I don't want to be playing hockey. I want to do, a program, study abroad, so you also have to let them decide what's the right path, and don't get it in their heads that if you don't do this, we work
Right.
so hard to get here, this means you're not succeeding. This isn't the plan. The plan can change. The plan can change,
100%.
and you have to accept that.
Yeah. I think every parent should put into their phone the phrase, "I'm only as happy as my unhappiest child."
It's so true. Listen, Pete, Mike, Christy, we've all seen this. I have seen too many kids pushed by their parents, not in a healthy way, where
Right.
their parents are trying to live vicariously through their kid.
Yeah.
They almost always burn out before making it anywhere. And the ones that do make it, unfortunately, 95% of them have drug or alcohol problems because they don't want to be there, or they feel that if they stop playing, they're going to let their parents down.
Right.
It's a dangerous place to be. Right. And so again, I don't want to turn this episode dark.
Yeah, but they do put a lot of pressure on their kids.
It's a balance. It's a balance. Look, again, there's no perfect parents. It is so hard. You guys, again, Pete, I always talk to Christy and Mike that this show is like therapy for me at the start. I've been in hockey my whole life, but my kid's a mite, right? So I've learned so much just by being a mite. Kind of help.
Oh yeah, there's nothing that a donut and a hot chocolate can't solve when you're a mite.
Right. For them, right? For us, it's like, wow, man, I just got to be working on this. And it's like, dude, I had to calm myself down that first year so much. I'm so thankful for the show because it taught me a lot. I had every bit of anxiety that every other parent has, knowing that I was going to have it. But
is that a red flag, Pete? When a dad, mom, and the kid are in your office, like, so this is what we have we have in store here for this team. Like, we think. Right. And it's like right now, it's like Lee with all the Philly fans, like, oh my God, we had a great game last night. Like, you had a great game last night. Right. I said they had a great game last night.
Right.
Team,
right.
Like that, and that's like I hear that all the time. Like, we're in Ranger country here, right? It's like, oh my God, we're doing so well.
We're doing so good. We got the right goalie.
You guys had 19 hot dogs, but you're not doing well. They're doing well, and I think that's your point, Pete. Right? You come in. It's not we, it's me. It's I'm the player. I'm the athlete. Right. I'm the one that has to commit to you. And I'm the one that has to show that passion, desire, and the ability to play within your system for the good of we, right? And that's where you leave that's where you do leave a little autonomy away. You have to get, you come in as a we or as a me, and then the collective we is how you succeed, in the game of hockey. But that's your job. Your job as a coach is to wean through those people and those players and figure out, okay, what works the best, because it's not always the best player, right? You can't have 15 first line centermen on your team.
Only one puck. It's only one puck.
Right. So somebody has to compete.
Right. And to answer your question a little bit with that, the best parent student athlete conversation when they're together is when the prospective student athlete talks about the hockey, and the parents might mention something about community service or opportunities for internships, things that aren't in that kid's head. Those are the best conversations. Those are the best conversations.
Well, I used to have those red flags all the time. I was an admissions director for 6 years, and I would sit in the room with mom and dad and the kid, and I who's the coach? How long has he been coaching? What has he won? Where has he won? Where has his players gone? Not one question about, who runs the physics lab, who's the best music teacher in the place. How many credits does my kid have to have, in a particular day? When study hall? Like, never any of that stuff. I'm like, well, you're going to school, like this. There is a school component here. So to your point, it's like it is the parents' responsibility, I guess, to fill in the gaps and be like, okay, we're going to university here,
right?
But what are the other things here that's going to allow my child? Because most of the time, it's you're the one paying, right? Not all the kids are paying for their own tuition. Right. So it's like, what are we getting out of this? Because we have agreed to come to your office to look at this university, and me and my wife are paying for it. So we just want to know, what are all the great things that outside of how great this hockey program is, that you're going to help my child, experience in this college.
Right. And even about the hockey program itself. I mean, ask about, what kind of a trainer do you have? How much experience there? If my kid gets hurt, what's the protocol? Do you call me? Do you have the trainer assess? How does that whole process work? Is there someone who is an academic intermediary for hockey players and, the professors? Is there somebody who advocates for hockey players when their schedule is putting them on the road from, Thursday until Sunday night? There's tons of questions you can ask that isn't specifically about how much ice time is my player going to get.
He's going to be on the power play. He's been on he's always been on the power play since he's
always been on the power play. You need to put them on.
Let me tell you why you need my kid.
And Mike, to your point, because I was in admissions at Gunnery for several years too, like you were in admissions, and if that parent asked me that question, what the first thing that comes into my mind is your child as ill prepared as you are? Because everything you just asked me, you could look up.
Yeah,
but they don't.
That's a great point, Pete. Like, I'll tell you again. I can say from my own experience again. I'd say a good chunk of the reason I went to the college I went to, and this is me, this is not everybody, was because they had a major I was interested in, and the facilities for that major, which was broadcasting, impressed me so much that it definitely veered my decision. Right. So, and I remember, Pete, you'll laugh at this, but that was my backup plan, was the education, because at 18 years old, my parents told me I needed a backup plan to hockey. Now, looking at this as an adult, I realized that hockey was always the backup plan and school was the primary for them, but they were very smart about telling me that, you need to know what you want to do when hockey's not around. I want to provide a quick quote I heard from a really good friend of mine. And parents, you got to kind of take this one however you want, but I remember she said, I don't own my child. And I didn't understand that till she dove into it, but she goes, they are a separate whole human being. I don't own them. I'm not them. And like what I mean by that is this. I see a lot of similarities in my son to me, but he's not me. And I got to remind myself of that a lot. In fact, I've really become cautious about saying to him, oh, you're just like me, because I don't want him to grow up thinking that. I do tell him we're similar in a lot of ways. I can understand why you react that way, but he's not me. And I got to approach him as a father, knowing that that's not me. He's not me. He's not going to be me. So I got to raise a human here who just happens to have several traits of his mother and father that we know. So I think, when we get to this college point, what are we developing here? Right. The child, and they're not children anymore at that point. I shouldn't even say that. The young adult has to become an adult. And this coach and this program and this school are going to be a path to them learning that. To me, that is by far the most important basis for questioning. How are you going to help, hopefully the students asking this, me become a better human being? And Mike, this goes back to what you said before. Okay. We all are under the belief here. And Pete, I know you're with this, that better people make better players at the end of the day, right? That the type of person you are directly affects who you are. So when we look at college hockey, pro hockey, youth hockey, the culture has to shift. We have got to shift away from A, pricing people out of the sport, which we're far way off. And then B, what are the outcomes here? Right? If it's not to become a better person, I don't care how good your kid is. It's not going to work out. It's never seen it work out long term where this isn't part of it. So I think that's part of what we're trying to do here. I know our listening audience obviously agrees with that because we get enough emails about it. Pete, I'm going to throw this back on you because we're almost out of time here. And for those of you listening, we are going to have Pete back on for a multitude of episodes. Just we have to pick your brain, Pete, for all the knowledge that you've gained over the years. But you're a big culture guy. I know that, right? And look, talent has to be there when you get to the collegiate level. You have to have some level of talent. You have to be able to produce in some way, but it's not the whole puzzle. So Pete, I guess the question I want to ask is what percentage, or, you don't have to put a number on, but how much does culture play into it? How important is culture to winning? How do we develop culture pre-college? And how do you cultivate that culture for college and beyond?
So that's a lot of questions.
It was six of them. I apologize. I've been known to do that.
So I think early on, like, it's going to sound silly, right? But I mean, something as simple as, I don't know, because I have grandchildren now, right? And they're just sort of getting to that age because they're youngish. Do kids still do chores around the house?
Oh,
right. I mean, how about something as simple as that? Like, is that not the beginning of responsibility and also some satisfaction, right? And then as we start to develop into high school, being part of clubs, being part of other things, maybe learning to play a musical instrument. Like, it's so hard when you're singularly focused in athletics to not understand that there's the who you are and there's the what you are, right? So if you're in college and you're playing your sport and you are a college hockey player, you graduate, then what? Like, what happened? Like, you're gone. Somebody else is in your stall. Somebody else is sitting, wearing your number. Somebody else is sitting in your place in the classroom. So the who you are matters so much more to us as human beings ultimately, where the what you are, that's like the fun stuff we got to do. Like, I coached for 7 years at Post, and it was fantastic. We got to the finals our last year. It was great. But if that's all I ever was, like, I want to be a dad, I want to be a husband, I want to be a grandfather. I have just as much fun taking my grandson out, teaching him how to fish, than I do anything else I do in my life, because I know there's more to it than that. And I think the fact that if you understand that there are more things to it, like I said, all those little things that you do in your life, helping out, being a good brother, being a good sister, because husband, wife, nobody else gets to do that except you. You're the only one that gets to do that. But if you're playing sports as an athlete, everybody else gets to do that, because there's a natural progression where somebody's doing it 20 years from now and somebody did it 20 years ago. So I think that piece and understanding that and teaching your kids that, I mean, I know I'm going on and on here, but I think that is ultimately, you're going to create a better human. And to your point, you're going to create a better player. Because if I don't have to worry about you in the dorm, I don't have to worry about you in the classroom, and I can focus on the hockey with you, we can talk about all that other stuff, but then I don't have to deal with it, and we can get better as a group, as a culture. And that's kind of what we created there, was that's who we were. Like, guys cared about all that other stuff. They were leaders on campus. You know, we led in community service. There was a year where we actually led the nation in Division II for hockey in community service.
Wow.
We were just as proud of that as we were the fact that, you know, we made the championship game. And at the end of the day, all that will carry that player, in our case, much further. I mean, we have guys that are playing pro now that played. That's great. That'll take care of itself. But at the end of the day, who you are matters more than what you are at that moment, I think.
That is a fantastic answer.
I agree.
That is a fantastic answer. I'll tell you this too, Pete, for everybody listening, and this echoes, you know, I do a lot of work in the mindfulness space and in the mental fitness, mental health space. And we have found there are 3 pillars of this, that if these 3 pillars are here, you're going to be probably in a good mental state. And that if one or any of these disappear, you start to slip towards depression. And you just tapped on them. One is purpose, right? The why you're just talking about. What is your purpose? Is it to be an NHL player or to be a good person? I love you said being a dad. I take so much purpose in being a dad and a husband as my primary role in my life, aside from all the stuff that I do. Number 2 is identity. You know, what do you identify as, right? So purpose and identity. And then the third is community. And that's the beauty of sports, is we get a community. But to your point, the day you graduate, you lose several of these things immediately in a snap of fingers. Veterans deal with this daily. I'm not going to get into veteran suicide and veteran depression, but it is a catastrophic problem. And it happens in sports too, because the day you're done playing, you lose your community, you lose your identity, and you lose your purpose. And to your point, Pete, we can start teaching our children these things at a very, very young age. Really 6, 7, 8, you can start teaching the ideals of trust, community, authenticity, adversity. Chores are a great one. I saw a great video the other day that reminded me, your 8-year-old can dress themselves, make themselves breakfast, make their own lunch, and get out the door for you to drive them to school. You don't have to do everything for them. It was a nice reminder. And then this morning, I actually made my kids do all that by themselves. But it's right. And it's hard because they're a pain in the butt and they fight you on everything. All right. But here's the thing. This is what I talked about earlier in the show, right? They got to figure it out. Because if I'm making their lunch when they're 18, we've got a problem. We got a big problem, right? So just to your point, it was a fantastic answer. I'm not trying I'm just trying to add on to it that parents, purpose, identity, community, so important to us as people. This has nothing to do with hockey now, right? Pete, you created a program with all 3 of those and higher purposes, higher identities, and higher community that transcend the program. When we do have you back, just to tease this to our audience, we are definitely going to dive into how you develop that program and other programs, right? And how it's not just about, here's a jersey, here's an ice rink, go out there and play, right? It's a little bit more than that. So I'm not going to close you. I want to make sure, Mike and Christy, I give you guys the final word before I slide into the close here.
Yeah, just sticking with that theme, and this just happened this past weekend. A college hockey mom, her daughter's younger, said to me, "Oh my gosh, Sophia's a senior. This is it for you." Like,
right to the heart.
What? You know something I know? I said, "Oh my gosh, what are you gonna do when she graduates?" And I said, "I can't wait for the next chapter. I'm excited about who she is as a person and what she's going to do with her life." It's just,
her life doesn't end after college.
Like they were ready to have a funeral for me. You know, my life is ending. No, it's not. Yeah.
No, that's why you have the podcast, right? 'Cause no, that's a great point. Life doesn't end after college. Hopefully it starts.
And it doesn't end for the college hockey mom either. So we have a lot of things going on that is more to life than just being in the stands watching your kids play. It's watching them grow and develop as incredible human beings. So, and that's just part of it.
All right, Grizzly Bear Benelli, you're up.
No, I mean, obviously I agree with Pete only because I kind of follow him and love what he's done with the players he's worked with. And knowing personally his own kids and the people he works with and the people he allowed to associate with him, you could see the values that are in there. I mean, the people, you are who you are around. Right. And I think that if you're in a situation like Coach Whitney was just explaining, that your identity, and I really try to focus that, and going back to what we do as a hockey society, we take a lot of that away from kids. Like we don't, it's very hard, right, to do both, right, Pete? It's hard to say, I want you to be a musician, I want you to be a horseback rider, I want you to see your grandmother on her 99th birthday. Like all this kind of stuff is really important, but if you miss my Friday night practice, I'm going to sit you for the weekend. Like it's just a hard thing, but I get it. And that's really the role of the parent to say, okay, well, and we've talked about this on many episodes about researching the organizations you actually associate yourself with and go to, and making sure if that's part of your value system, that you're not a hockey player. Hockey is just something you do, then you make a determination on where you want to go. And I think if you're really that talented and you're destined to be a player that can play at the highest levels, you're going to get there anyway. Because your own inner, your inner drive is going to drive you to get there, whether you went and missed, a 50-minute practice in November or not. So I think it's a great way to a great perspective to look at, from the time your kid is 6 and 7 and 8 years old, to not say, well, I'm going to put everything into he's a hockey player, she's a hockey player, and just be a person. The hockey will take care of itself, and maybe you'll be lucky, and the other stuff will take care of itself too.
Sure.
Fantastic points all around.
Very good. Very good.
Pete, I want to say, and we knew we were not going to be able to have just one episode with you. That's why I'm going to have to have you.
I know I have so many other questions for him, and I know parents do too. So definitely send us an email, and we'll try to get those questions, and we'll even have Pete answer them. I'm sure you'd be very generous about that, Pete.
For sure.
He's retired. He has plenty of time. He has plenty of time.
I mean, there's the whole aspect of how much do you invest in, hiring someone to do videos for your kids, to get, people to look at your kid, and the whole recruiting process itself can be a whole other episode. So yeah, we have tons of other questions for you
all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what, Christy, you and I were on the same mind right there. Yeah. So listen, if you do have questions for us or Pete, he will be back. Feel free to email us at team@ourkidsplayhockey.com. Again, we do this show for you. Amazed how many emails come in. Some of them just thanking us for doing the show. Yeah, you're all the best. And again, we're going to start doing more mailbag type episodes. I know Christy, Mike, and I have talked a lot about this would be a good topic and that would be a good topic. So we're going to be doing those, but feel free, again, it's team@ourkidsplayhockey.com. Remember, you can hear all of the episodes we've ever done at ourkidsplayhockey.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you do enjoy them, share them with your friends, put them in your team snap, let people know about the show. We are trying to grow the audience. If you can give us those 5-star reviews, that helps a lot as well. Keeping us at the top of the charts. You are a wonderful, beautiful audience, and we cannot thank you enough for putting us in that top 10 spot. But before I finally close this, Pete, I just want to thank you again for being here with this episode. Just golden nuggets the entire time of wisdom, and we're thankful that you could spend some time with us today.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. So nice to meet everybody. Can't wait to do it again.
Oh, and we're going to do it again.
Pete.
All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure you have a wonderful week, wonderful weekend. Wherever you're traveling, hopefully it's fun. Enjoy your hockey. Have a great day. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.